Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Weaver Guide. In this guide, I'm going to go over a couple of quick things to try and help people in the community who are struggling with Weaver, because that seems to be a lot of you. This isn't limited to just Weaver. This is going to end up being probably pretty overall with Ellie's. So let's get into it. First off, we're going to go over the Condi build just because it's the easiest, in my opinion, to master. And the survivability on it's already pretty high. So first things first, I'm going to go over the traits. I'm not going to get too in-depth into any of them really, except for two. Strength of Stone, which I'll get back to in a little bit, and Written in Stone. Written in Stone is awesome because you can continuously go back to using your signets, and you still get their passive effects, which is super helpful for extra burning and for extra healing. So, that's number one. The other traits I'm going to go over soon is going to be these bottom ones here. But for right now, this is the way you're going to set up for full DPS Condi build, and I will go over that more in depth here shortly. Alright, the next thing we'll go over is your armor. Full Vipers is generally what you want to run here. The only thing I would recommend changing for the full Vipers, that the Snow Crows recommends that you use Elementalist runes. I kind of agree with them on that, which is kind of rare for me. Your other option is Renegade runes. Renegade runes will perform just as well. But for this specific build where you have Vipers, I recommend using Elementalist. I'll show you when I use Renegade, but the extra power and flat condition damage with that condition duration really is pretty big. So I highly recommend running these runes over these runes. The one place where I differ with Snow Crows is here. For my bolt, I run Superior Sigil of Smoldering. A lot of them will tell you to run Bursting and Malice. Bursting will give you plus 5% condition damage. I prefer the Burning Duration just because that's where the majority of my damage is from. They'll tell you to use Bursting or Sigil of Geomancy and Sigil of Malice. Now, I do recommend Malice, the 10% condition duration, just because that is super broken. But yeah, that's pretty much the basics for Condi. Next thing we're going to go over is Power. Power is pretty similar to the Condi setup. You switch out one of the trait lines for air, and you drop two things down a little bit lower. Again, this is the setup. There's really nothing too special about this. The only thing I'll go over really quickly is your air trait line. You could either run Fresh Air or Bolt of the Heart. Both work pretty well. However, Fresh Air allows you to switch through your elements a lot quicker, getting to CCs for those break bars and stuff like that much faster than you can with Bolt of the Heart. So if you're someone who doesn't want to wait and time and slow your DPS to set up and be ready for a CC, I recommend going with Fresh Air because it's just going to be a lot quicker, a lot easier, and a lot more enjoyable in my opinion. Bolt of the Heart, it's pretty equal with damage. I prefer Fresh Air though, for the reasons I just told you. When it comes to your gear with this, it's essentially full Berserkers with about 3 pieces of Assassins. I just do every other, so I'll do my shoulders, my gloves, and my boots Assassins, and then everything else I have is full Berserkers. This is pretty straightforward. You want the higher ferocity for more crit. For the sigils, I use Force and Air. You could use Force and Fire. You could use Force and Accuracy. There's a lot of you have a lot of play here with the sigils, but Force and Air definitely seems to be the best for me. Right, the next thing I'm going to go over is my solo build. A lot of people ask me for the solo build, especially if they see me in Fractals. If I'm with kind of a shoddy team, this is probably what I'm going to end up running, just because I don't trust most healers, and if I don't have my healer, which is an awesome healer, her name is Star, I will not really trust them. So if we die or wipe 1 or 2 times, I'll switch to this build. Now this build is primarily full Trailblazers. I do have a couple of pieces of Vipers mixed in. I believe 2 or 3 of my trinkets are Vipers, and then everything else is Trailblazers, and my headpiece is also Vipers. There's a few different things you could do here, but for PvE, this survivability is usually way more than enough. If you still find yourself struggling with your Condi, go to your Condi trait line and just switch to your Master's Fortitude, and you can switch to these two bomb traits as well. Both of these traits will improve your survivability by quite a lot. It's quite a large margin because you get more dodges with Vigor, and this one gives you more barrier. And this one, your dual attacks give you Vigor, and dodge roll and gives you barrier. This one is your stances will your Stone Resonance will automatically activate when you get low. Adding Stone Resonance over Glyph of Storms gives you a ridiculous amount of survivability as well. So just some little tips for some survival when it comes to PvE. Now for War vs. World, I run a pretty similar build. If you find yourself getting into a lot of trouble in War vs. World, especially if you're soloing, switching your runes to Sanctuary on a Weaver can be super toxic. You essentially gain barrier all the time. Just whatever you're doing, you somehow gain barrier as well, just because the amount of passive healing we can actually have, especially with our signets and stuff like that. And for your trait lines for War vs. World, generally this is what I run. Your Condi damage is still going to be extremely high. As I actually forgot to go over that with the Condi build, but if you look, I'm in my full Trailblazers here with a couple pieces of Vipers. My Condi damage is higher than my Condi damage on my Condi build. If I switch back to my Condi traits, my Condi trait line, I have 1728. If I switch to my solo build, I go to 1756. And the reason for that is because you sacrifice a little bit of power, but look at what you gain in toughness. You gain almost 700 toughness. So, thanks to our Earthline trait here, Strength of Stone, we gain 10% condition damage based on our toughness. So running a Trailblazer build with a Condi setup is amazing on Weaver, frankly, just because of that. You know, your Condi damage stays about the same. You lose a little bit of damage with power, but that's why I run the Renegade runes on here rather than the superior runes of the Elementalist, because I'm not worried about power here. Here, I'm all about Condi damage and Condi duration and stuff like that. But, you know, PvP fights aren't always that long, so I would go with the condition damage over the condition duration and just the flat little bit of damage with the power. Alright, the next thing I'm going to show you is, in the easiest way possible, is the DPS rotation for power. The video you're watching, I've been running Condi, so the Condi rotation is pretty simple. Essentially, you go from fire to earth, using whatever skills in between for filler damage. Keep your prime roll stance activated when you're able to. Fire for burning, and earth for bleeding, obviously. And when you use Weave Self, make sure you go through all the elements. If you need healing, and this works for any of the combinations, you want to go into earth and then water, and you want to use your 2 and to your 4, and you give some AoE healing. For the basics, we're not going to worry about your utilities for this right now, for power. So for power, you want to make sure you get your 3 attacks off, because your third attack hits multiple times. I believe it hits 3 times, and it's a lot of damage, and a lot of Weavers will cycle too quickly to hit that, and it will lower your damage by quite a bit. Your general idea with power is to cycle between your dual attacks on almost all your attunements. So the way I generally do it is I go into air, I'll use Quantum Strike, get my 3 auto attacks, go into fire, use my dual attack, get my 3 auto attacks. You can switch into fire while still getting your auto attacks. Switch to earth to pop lava skin, pop turning earth as you're going back to air, and you're back at the beginning. Except this time, rather than going into earth again, what I do is I'll go into water. So right here, I'll switch to water, use my dual attack, and then go back to double air. And, you know, with your fillers and whatnot, the rotation should work out pretty well, whereas now you're cycling back through. I'm back into fire, and I'm going to go to earth. There's lava skin, and I clicked too quickly for churning earth. But churning earth should also be off cooldown. So let's check real quick. Yep, so it would have been off cooldown. So that's the pretty much the basics. You want to pop Primordial Stance on Fire Fire or Fire Earth for more damage. If you want to give some vulnerability, you could do it on Fire Air or Earth Air. Fire Air seems to be the best for vulnerability stacking while not losing too much damage, so popping it now would be really good when you're in this combination here. And you want to use Firestorm. You don't want to use Lightning Storm anymore. It's not as good as Firestorm is now. And on power, you don't use your Signifier.